Hello and welcome to this presentation on reciprocal teaching for EDRD 5530 by Andrew Evans and Libby Brown. Reciprocal teaching is a method developed by Palingsar and Brown in the early 80s that Lori Oskus, pictured here, describes as a scaffolded discussion technique that is built on 4 strategies that good readers use to comprehend text. And those strategies are predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. So the way that happens in my classroom, ideally, is that students sit around a table or a cluster of desks with a shared text, and they take turns reading, retelling, clarifying, questioning, predicting, and then reading again. Before reading, students take time to prearrange stopping points, preview text features, predict what the topic of the text is, think about and write down their prior knowledge about the topic, predict what the author might say about the topic, and then come up with a purpose in the form of a question for reading the text. And when they get stuck, they are taught to use what I call the DUUL or dual process, where they determine the importance of an unknown word and use context clues or word parts to figure the word out before they look up the word or ask for help. Next year, I think I might change this to the COOL process, because determine the importance is really hard to explain, and COOL sounds, well, much cooler. As a matter of fact, here's an anchor chart I use in my classroom to explain the dual process. And here's another graphic I use to explain the whole reciprocal teaching routine and how it works. First, students collectively go through the pre-reading process I've already explained, and then a student reads aloud to their small group until the first stopping point. After that, the student to their left attempts to retell what was read. If they can't retell, or if they would rather, they can go through the dual process to clarify a word, and the next student will then retell. After that, the student after them will ask a question about what was read, and then the student after them will make a prediction about what will come next. Then the next student will read, and the process will repeat until the end of the text, when all students will write a summary, answer their purpose and other questions, and share their opinions about the text. In my classroom, I use a bookmark for a sort of a talking rock. The bookmark has sentence starters and helps indicate, it helps tell me and others whose turn it is. Unlike a talking rock, though, it's not meant to keep students from interrupting each other. For reciprocal teaching, you want students to share their ideas as much as possible and to add to each other's ideas. So, yeah, after students reach the end of the text, they're supposed to try to answer their purpose question. But if what they read didn't answer their purpose question, they might have to go back and revise the question or think about whether their predictions were off and why. And summarizing is a good way to include lessons about text structure, genre, and purpose of a text. Some of you, I'm sure, are better at teaching summarizing than I am, but here are some of the things I'm thinking about when I ask my students to summarize texts in some common genres. Graphic organizers can also be really helpful ways to scaffold summarizing for your students, because summarizing and synthesizing can be really complex work. And then it's really important that you give your students an opportunity to express what they thought about a text, both aloud to each other and in writing. If your students are like mine, they might sometimes tell you something different than what they tell their peers. So what follows are some ways reciprocal teaching benefits culturally and linguistically diverse learners, and some connections to the texts we read in this course. Reciprocal teaching provides an opportunity for students to practice metacognitive, self-monitoring, reading and learning strategies. This was mentioned in both the Paraguay and Boyle and Echevarria et al. Texts. Reciprocal teaching can be combined with other strategies, for instance, graphic organizers, sentence stems, etc., to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of your learners. Differentiation is mentioned in the Echevarria et al. Text on page 53. Reciprocal teaching can be a technique for scaffolding complex, meaningful, culturally relevant texts for your students, which is supported by both Herrera and Alfred Tatum. Reciprocal teaching gives students an opportunity to practice building their cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP. Reciprocal teaching provides students with opportunities to learn new information, discuss it, and process it. Reciprocal teaching provides teachers with multiple opportunities for informal assessment of student learning, achievement, motivation, and attitudes. Reciprocal teaching can benefit culturally and linguistically diverse learners because it allows an opportunity for all students to share a little of themselves, their knowledge or understanding of the new vocabulary words or the concept to be introduced, or their perspective on the issues to be discussed.